Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Tehillim Treasures, where we will plumb the beautiful depths and treasures of Tehillim from the very beginning of Tehillim to the end of David HaMelech's masterpiece. This episode is brought to you by Chazaq. Chazaq is an organization that helps public school children become Shomrei Torah mitzvahs, exposes them to the beauty of Torah and mitzvahs. Imagine for a moment you're standing in a store or you're walking down the street. You know the neighbor. You've known them for many years. You see their children riding their bike in the driveway. And you know they're Jewish. But now there's someone who can help them take the next step. And that is Chazaq, with countless programs after school and other wonderful programs to help expose them to the beauty of Yiddishkeit. If you know someone or know someone that knows someone that can help these children, then please email at psty@chazaq.org. This episode is also brought to you by Chickens for Shabbos. Chickens for Shabbos is exactly what it says it is, plus more. There are many people. There are Melamdim's children. There are Agunis. There are Grushis. There are families that do not have simple essentials for Shabbos and for life. Whatever they need, Chickens for Shabbos is there to provide. Please do your utmost to help in any way you can. We now continue this week with chapter 97 and 98, Kapitel Sadi Zayin and Sadi Ches, as we continue this beautiful journey through David HaMelech's Tehillim. Hashem Malach Tagel Haaretz Yismechu Iyim Rabim. Another kapitel from the Kabbalah Shabbos ceremony. Or Zoru Alat Sadik. Light is sown for the righteous and for the upright of heart. Tzaddik. You know, when you see a little kid, you say, "Hey, tzaddik, how you doing?" Today, everybody's a tzaddik. But what traits are required for a person to really be a tzaddik? Does somebody need to daven well? Does he need to learn well? Does he need to do chasodim? Perhaps all three. Well, let us look at the lives of several tzaddikim throughout Tanakh. Let's begin with Yosef HaTzaddik, whose brothers sold him down to Egypt. And he came to the house of Potiphar. He was thrown into prison. And every day, Ashes Potiphar would try to seduce him, would try to get him to commit an Aveira. Yosef HaTzaddik is thousands of miles away from anybody he knows or recognizes or has anything to do with. There's no Jews for years. No one will know. Yosef HaTzaddik is faced with this temptation, but Yosef sees Demus Diuk Neishalavim, he sees his father's face. He's inspired, and by Yonos Hayetze Achutza, he runs outside, and he runs away from the Aveira. Vayemoin, he refuses to do the Aveira, and when he does, till the end of time, Yosef is called a tzaddik. He earns that appellation. He earns the title. Person needs to understand that a tzaddik comes from when a person is shomer kedusha. Somebody guards and watches over the kedusha of every individual, of each and every yid. We have such holiness, and yet there's temptation that surrounds all of us. A person has to be misgaber, he has to be strong, he has to be willing to overcome those desires, those temptations, so he could stand strong, so he can be Mekadosh Shem Shamayim, whether it be publicly, in the most private and secret of rooms. Mordechai HaTzaddik is another tzaddik. He's an individual who understands the role, and the role is that you have an achrayus. Just as Yosef HaTzaddik sees his father and he has an achrayus, why does he have to be a tzaddik? One day you'll be like your father. Demus Diuk Neishalavim, he sees his father's image. And when a person realizes he has a responsibility, it matters. It doesn't make a difference if nobody else is around. There's a job to do. He's holding up the holiness of the Jewish people. Now you might say to yourself, what does it make a difference if I'm holy or I'm not holy? It doesn't make a difference. Oh, that's where you're wrong. Makes all the difference in the world. Mordechai Tzaddik knows the idea of responsibility, because when Esther Hamalka is encouraged to go to Achashverosh, he tells her the following. He says, Esther, you have to go. Because if you do not go to Achashverosh, you know what's going to happen? Now at this point, we think he's going to say, then the Jewish people will be destroyed. No. He got la malchus. You know what's going to happen? We're going to be saved. But this is your moment in time. This is the moment that you will be remembered for the rest of time. Are you ready to rise to the occasion? Because if you're not, somebody else will. And you and your household and your parents' household and your entire family name will be lost forever. Achrayus matters. Person has to know that. Person has to make sure that he understands he has responsibility. He has a role to fulfill. Well, there's a beautiful story that's told. And this story revolves another way of Achrayus. Achrayus not only to Hashem, Achrayus not only to saving the lives of people, but having the responsibility of taking care of other people, fellow Yidden. And there's a story about a Slonim Chassid, Reb Aaron David Kaplowitz, who owned a makolet in Petach Tikva some 60 years ago. He barely made ends meet. And one day, somebody opened the store right next door. Well, most people would have been upset, furious, but not Reb Aaron David. In fact, he went over to his new neighbor and he welcomed them to the neighborhood. And he said, listen, if a customer comes into the store and asks for an item that you don't carry, listen to this, don't turn him away. You know why? Tell him that you're going to look for it in your supply closet. Come get it from me. You won't lose the customer. And you will be able to make some money as well. Who thinks like that? Who's looking out for his fellow friend and fellow Yid in that manner? You know who does that? A Baal Achrayus does it. A Tzaddik does it. May we all be Zoich to be a Tzaddik. And finally, in Kapitel Tzaddiches, in chapter 98, we continue L'chun Ranana, and we end off this kapitel of Mizmor Shul Hashem Shir Chodesh Knifla'is Asa. We say, Na'arai Simcha Uchav Yachad Hadim Yiraneinu. The rivers will clap hands, mountains will exalt together. And the rivers of the world sing this song in something called Perek Shira. Perek Shira is a collection of all of nature that sings the songs to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Rivers clap. You ever hear a river clap? Maybe if you tell me a river splashes, but a river claps, seems strange. But let's understand what it means to clap. You know when people clap? When they're showing signs of approval. When they're cheering you on. When someone receives an award and the audience claps, the people in the audience are voicing their approval and acknowledging that this individual deserves an award. On a deeper level, the right hand represents kindness. The left hand signifies the opposite, judgment. When we clap, we are joining the judgment and the kindness together. Rivers, tremendous kindness. Rivers perform such generosity. They irrigate lands. They cause crops to grow, providing food for millions of people. They transport merchandise and people. They're a source of power and energy and electricity. And yet, rivers are so destructive, they flood homes. They destroy villages. They drown victims and ruin lives. They can do both. When the river claps, it acknowledges its acceptance and approval of Hashem's judgment and his kindness. That's Naharoi Simcha. And it's important for every person to know that we are like a river. We all have our strengths and our weaknesses. We all do good things and some not so good. But a person has to remember that you play a role in making the world better. A number of years ago, there was a young man by the name of David Stefanski, went to learn in Europe, and while he was there, he went to go visit the Chafetz Chaim. He went, and it took him a few days to get to the Chafetz Chaim. By the time he arrived, David realized he missed Mincha that day. And while he was traveling, it had slipped his mind. While speaking to the Chafetz Chaim, David mentioned this oversight. Chafetz Chaim said in previous times when the world was at a much higher level, and there were people who excelled in their studies and their prayers, each individual's prayer was not that valuable. But today, when the people of our generation are on a much lower level, when we're not so strong in our Avodas Hashem, one tefillah is soul-crushing. Every tefillah is worth so much. We need your help. We work in a world of supply and demand. When the supplies were plenty, demand was less. But now that the supply is scarce, the merchandise has gone up in price, and it is much more valuable. And we understand this well, especially with inflation. And then he said, because the merchandise, the haneh, the pleasure that Hashem gets, is unfortunately scarce. It's not so common. The boss, capital B, is not as particular about the perfection of the goods. He'll take anything you got. He's happy with anything he can get his hands on. Every prayer, every bit of learning, no matter how imperfect, is a treasured gift by the Ribbono Shel Olam. We must remember that. Every individual is a river. Every individual has koiches to give, has abilities, and it can make the world better. We just have to remember it. And when we do, perhaps we'll get a standing ovation in Shamayim. Until next time, sei gesund.